There. Okay. All right. So what this means is that the doors were just opened and instantly.
I know. Wow. That's a lot of numbers.
Yeah. And I think we're going to have a really great turnout today. It looks like we're going to have at least 400 people with us today.
Zoinks. That's exciting.
So I'm
Nancy, I even did my hair for this and you didn't notice. And I went out and bought a grown-up girl shirt and you didn't even notice. And I'm wearing grown-up fake pearls. See, trying to grow up on you guys.
I'm not gonna lie, Gab. I'm missing the beanie.
I know.
I know. I was going to say something earlier about your hair, Gab, and I was going to ask you, like, where's your beanie?
I know. I know. I was like, I'm an adult.
Like an adult. She looks like an adult. Oh my goodness.
I'm trying to grow up. Macy's made a mistake and gave me a charge card. So now it's
Oh no.
game on. It's like they didn't get the memo.
No, it's very nice. I like your shirt. I was
Thank you.
actually teasing Jamal earlier because his shirt also has buttons. And you know.
All the way up.
So now we have 3 adults today. 3
Yeah,
adults.
we're all
Look at
grown.
us.
I just need cool eyeglasses. You guys have the cool frames.
Yeah, do you know where to get cool frames?
Where?
I wondered if they had. You're in Pittsburgh, though. It's Warby Parker. Have you ever heard of them?
Oh, I have. Yeah. We don't have a location, I don't think, but you can buy them online.
But you can buy them online, right?
Yeah.
And they have this cool thing where you can pick 5 and they'll send them to you, and then you send back the ones you don't want, and which I think is really cool too.
That is really cool.
But for
What if you
me,
don't need eyeglasses? Do they still send you frames?
well, you can get frames that you can use as sunglasses, without
cool.
prescriptions. And I have a Warby Parker around the corner for me, which is so much fun. Because the people that work there are great. And these glasses, there was this whole conversation going on in the store as, no, she should not wear them. And then the guy who was helping me said, I think she should. And, there was this going back and forth, and I was just sitting there laughing because they were so funny. And I said, well, it's totally out of character for me, so I'm going to do it.
Nice.
And
Apparently there are 2 locations in Pittsburgh. People
I
are
was
saying.
about to say, you're getting some info
Awesome.
there.
See, I don't need glasses, so I don't ever really know where you buy them, but I love how they look.
And then their frames are usually $95. So you can get real glasses frames, that are, and have them made as sunglasses, for $95, and you can have them for the rest of your life.
I love it.
So let's see, we're at 12:01. We've got 321, 2, 3. So people are still coming in the door. Should we give them a couple of minutes? Oh, here's another place, Zenny Online for cool frames. It's always good to have, a recommendation. Ross Park Mall. Do you know where that is, Gab?
Yeah, I'm a fan.
Mm.
A fan of Ross Park. When I have comedy shows and I have like tons of energy on those days, I go to malls and do mall walks and then buy myself a shirt to wear. That's usually, like, my pre-show routine. But I'm very poor, so I'm normally at a store that, like, $8 H&M or something, Well, not now that I have the Macy's card.
Say, hey,
You messed up, Macy's.
credit.
So as people are coming in, and we're just going to give just a couple of minutes before we officially begin, but let me ask everyone to, first of all, let me welcome you all as you're coming in the door. And please if you'd like, put your name and what you do in the chat, and where you're from too, as that's helpful to us as we're reaching out and talking during the webinar to know where people are from and what they do. And I'm getting excited and I'm being calm here. I'm going to give it one more minute. I don't think I'm going to be able to stand it anymore because I'm so excited about what we're doing here today.
And while we're waiting one more minute, I would like to welcome everybody to Mental Health Awareness Month.
Oh, that's right. We don't want to forget that.
It is May, and it brings us into Mental Health Awareness Month, and I've seen some really cool things already. The NBA actually has a really good promotional campaign going on right now. Be kind to your mind. They have a couple of commercials out right now that's championing mental health awareness. So remember, everyone, be kind to your mind. Take care of you.
Very important. Well, in the midst of all of these chats that are being posted, I just put a link to a page that's on the PA Care partnership website, and it has a list of Mental Health Awareness Month events that are happening with those of us who are working on this grant. And there are some really exciting things. And if you're in the Harrisburg area, you don't want to forget to stop by and see the green lighting. I'm a big fan of the fountain. I love when water is colored like that. So there'll be green water in the fountain for Mental Health Awareness Month in the Harrisburg area.
Just from light, not from pollution.
Exactly. It's just like no pollution. We don't believe in pollution.
All
Okay.
right, Nancy, you want to get us started?
I think that bring up my other thing here. Okay. I think we're ready to there's still a few more people coming in, but I think we can get started. Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. Let's
Are we
get
ready?
going. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, here we go, everyone. Hello. Yes, I'm very, very excited today to be here with our friend Gab. And I want to welcome you all to Be Nice to One Another and Other Things She Has Learned from Kids by Gab Bonesso. It is provided by the PA Care Partnership Grant in association with the Office of Mental Health and Substance Abuse Services. At any time during the presentation, please type your questions into the Q&A feature, which you will find by running your mouse along the bottom of the Zoom screen. Today's moderator is our friend Jamal Ford, and he is also a member of the PA Care Grant and works with youth and is the perfect person to be hosting us today. At the end of the presentation, Jamal will provide Gab with questions you have provided in the Q&A. And I'm Nancy Massey, and I will be moderating the chat. So you'll see my name, as you've maybe already seen me in the chat. And occasionally I will be interrupting. So thank you all for joining us today. And let me tell you a little bit about Gab, who is a comedian, motivational speaker, writer, and producer. Many of you remember Gab from prior webinars we have done in past years. Gab is an award-winning comedian, children's performer, and producer working on stage, radio, and in print. Gab is the co-creator, lead performer of the Josh and Gab Show, an anti-bully rock and roll program. In addition, she has done corporate comedy and videos for American Eagle Outfitters, has been an on-air producer for CBS Radio, and has written columns for AOL, the Pittsburgh City Paper, and the Pittsburgh Current. Yes, she's from the Pittsburgh area. As a comedian, mental health motivational speaker, Gab Bonesso personally understands childhood trauma. She has also spent the last decade visiting schools with her anti-bully assembly program. These experiences have given Gab a unique perspective on our current mental health crisis in kids. Our format today is going to be a little bit different. And I'm personally excited about this, and I think you're all going to enjoy it. Jamal found us 3 exceptional teen advisors from the PA Youth Advocacy Network. Gab interviewed them in order to bring their insights on mental health and teens in today's world into the webinar. The teen advisors are Mohammed Shadid, Ishani Bansal, and Janaya Coleman. I had the opportunity to join during the interviews, and we'll be adding the full interview video to the webpage within the next day or so. Again, let me remind you, please don't forget to add your questions in the Q&A during the webinar. So instead of a PowerPoint, Gab created an 8-minute introductory video that includes her teen interviews. We will start today's webinar with this video and then turn it over to Gab after the video. First, the introductory video.
I can start. I think more so than in middle school, there is more kindness. And I think that has to do a lot with maturity, and people just growing like more confident with themselves and not really worrying about what other people think about them. But also on the other hand, like the pandemic has affected so many other things. There are like still gaps in like social development, social health. So there are still times when high schoolers are not kind to each other, but I can say like as a senior that as people progress and mature and grow up, the rates of bullying and making fun of each other definitely go down.
I can see like most, like for me, my friends, they do reach out, they'll like notice, but I've seen like with other students that may not have any friends, no one really reaches out. So it kind of gives me like an opportunity. I'll reach out, but I feel for me, most people don't reach out, and I see that a lot.
I'll definitely second that. After the pandemic, I feel like it became less about making friends and more about getting through the year. As far as what I can see, like most of my current friends are some of the ones that I've maintained through middle school because I actually joined high school straight like from Zoom. I had Zoom all through 8th grade. So
Jeez.
yeah, it's definitely, for me personally, it's very hard that way too.
I think one example I can think of is like when there was the TikTok trend of like devious licks. I think that was like the only major case where students were like disrespectful to the building and like trying to take
Okay.
and break things. But yeah, I think that's like social media would be the one that prompts this negative behavior more than anything else.
I can see that a lot. A lot of people, I feel like we lost social skills like over the pandemic, which kind of, and like we had a lot of independence during that time.
Well, there are more resources than before the pandemic, and I think that's one of the benefits of the pandemic was that it brought more light to the overall mental health situation. I still think it's heavily stigmatized, especially in like the high school environment, because as teenagers, we're going to judge everyone a lot. I'm not proud of that, but that's just a trait that our group does or generation does a lot. So there's still, I think, a really heavy stigma. And even my school has like resources. We have this place called the Chill Room, where students can go when they're feeling like stressed or overwhelmed. But it's rarely used too because you have to ask for a pass to be able to go that. And of course, like no one wants to get up in front of the entire class and teacher and be like, "Hey, can I get a pass to go to this place?"
So we don't have a chill room, but I do agree with the concept that in high school it's less talked about because as students grow older, maybe they're taking more advanced classes, honors and AP, there really isn't time. Like for us, we do have designated mental health days, which are supposed to be the first Friday of every month. But for more advanced classes, like especially AP classes, teachers don't really do those days. So it's not really having much of an effect.
I had recently switched over to online, and a thing that I know since I'm doing online now is that they don't talk about mental health because I think they think since you're doing online school, your mental health isn't affected. So they might have like
Oh,
a mention like, oh, mental health week, we'll talk about it. They're like, mental health, this is this. And it's like, no resources, no, nothing else.
I think unfortunately we've gotten used to it just because it seems to happen every day. So we like accepted the fact that it could happen, which is really sad, especially in the place of school, which is supposed to be safe. But we've, I guess, as high school students, we've been desensitized to it all just because of the rapid occurrences that happen. Like recently, like about 2 weeks ago in the Pittsburgh area, there was like a hoax call. 6, 7 schools were, probably more, were shut down just in the Pittsburgh area. Um, and like our school, we weren't like freaking out because it happens. So yeah.
To mental health to be valued and know that it's important, and safety, not having to like have to plan like if a shooter was to come into a school and having to know what you'll do, where you are, and having to think, I have to message my parents goodbye. Safety and mental health being valued.
For me, it would be mental health education, more educational reform in schools, maybe mandating just a couple of days of instruction throughout the year. Because for me, the reason like I'm speaking to you today is because I had a class called positive psychology, and that taught me about mental health and the importance of it. Because my family is like of Middle Eastern origins, and there's a really heavy taboo about talking about mental health at all. So I initially ignored it. I thought it was like pointless. It was like a hoax, all of that. But like reading that book like opened my mind to the world of mental health and how like valuable it is and how like it affects everything else that follows in your life, including like your education, your performance in school. So I think many kids still struggle with like that internal struggle based on what like their parents, their culture says about mental health. So I think just providing the information because that's one of the reasons why there's like an epidemic of mental health in the United States and around the world, in my opinion, is because when people do struggle with these mental health illnesses, disorders, they don't know how to deal with it and they don't know what they should do. So they just take it and it just escalates and it's worse. So, but I think if people just have basic knowledge about mental health and what to do when they are living with a mental health illness, it can be much better and bring more awareness overall.
For me, it would be a system in place to let everyone know that like I'm here for you because kind of like Muhammad said, a lot of people they have mental health issues, but because of their own personal reasons or because of societal reasons, they feel like they don't want to share it because they don't want to be seen as weak or different from everyone else. So even if there is therapeutic services available, they aren't going to go for it because they don't want to be seen as like that person who does does that type of stuff and is different from everybody else. And even like among our friends, we don't really share this type of stuff. At least not everyone feels comfortable sharing this stuff because they don't want to lose friends and they don't want to be judged. So just a way for everyone to know that they won't be judged.
hi, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in. I want to thank Nancy and Jamal and Mark and the PA Cares Partnership for having me again. This is my 3rd year in a row, and I'm just always honored. My name is Gab Bonesso. I am an adult woman living with bipolar disorder, CPTSD, OCD, and anxiety. I am also a school performer, and I go to schools all over the country, but primarily Pennsylvania, with a program called the Josh and Gab Show, which we started off as an anti-bully rock and roll band. But through time and doing the program, I don't like the term anti-bully anymore because I don't like the idea of being anti a child. And I think being a bully is a lot more complicated than just a kid being bad. So I like to tackle it from a different angle. And I like to think of it more as a pro-kindness, pro-empathy assembly. And, that happened through the years. It evolved, and we've evolved. I was really excited excited at the opportunity to interview some high school students. So I also want to thank Janaya, Mohammed, and Ashani for taking time out of their day to let me interview them. Primarily when I go to schools, I present for pre-K to 8th grade. That's the general group that I am presenting for. And I would say even the majority is more pre-K to like 5th grade, you know, more primary intermediate level, but we also do a good bit of middle schools. It is very rare we go into a high school, and generally when we are invited into a high school, they don't think those kids need a pro-empathy assembly. So they'll usually have us present it as though like it's a career day and we're showing them what we do for our living while talking about empathy. So yeah, it was really exciting to talk to these kids, because I am seeing things in the schools, but I almost needed older kids to articulate what I was wondering, what I thought was going on. And I think it was very obvious from those students that the pandemic is still having an effect on them. I thought it was really interesting that they're all fully aware that it has affected social skills among themselves and among their peer group. I also thought it was a really valuable point when we were talking about disrespect towards adults and faculty, and they referenced the pandemic and the loss of social skills. I think as grown-ups and as teachers, you know, it's a very simple black and white understanding of you respect, you speak the certain way, you should be in your seat when I tell you to be. And I think for these kids, what, you know, this idea that the pandemic led to this lack of respect. I mean, for some kids, they were learning remotely for an entire year, right? And they didn't have an adult necessarily in the room with them, keeping them on track. And I always wondered during this pandemic, you know, to myself, I'm like, I wonder if there's going to be this sense of independence among those kids, especially the kids who could be remote and thrive in school, right? Like if you're getting all A's and you're doing it from the comfort of your pajamas in your bedroom, you could come back to school with an attitude of, I don't need this. You know what I mean? I've just proven for a year, I don't need you guys. And I do wonder if that is where some of the disrespect is coming. And with that, I think we need more social skill resources. I mean, clearly that is something that was lost during the pandemic. You know, I even see it with my little godson who's 3 years old. He's a homebody. He would rather be alone than socialize at 3 because that's what he's used to. That was what he was born into. So I think that was a really valuable point by the kids, the high school kids that could actually articulate that. Because, you know, you talk to a 7-year-old and you're like, why are you yelling right now? Don't yell. You shouldn't be yelling. You know, it's very simple. We don't yell in school. And a 7-year-old can't say, because I'm frustrated after the last 3 years of my life. You know, they can't verbalize that or articulate that. And I have seen that a lot in my assembly program. So my assembly program is different than most assembly programs. It's very high energy. It's rock and roll. It's hip hop music. It's dancing. It's comedy. It's motivational speaking. It's amped up. And one thing I have seen is just this like screaming that is happening. And I honestly think it is a manifestation of 3 years of being trapped in their homes, and they're 7 years old. And now they're in a rock concert where people are being a little loud. I'm going to see if I can get away with, you know, and obviously the teacher's like, stop that. Do not scream. Why are you screaming? It makes no sense to scream. But when you step back and you're like, well, actually it kind of makes a little sense to scream. I'm an adult and I know they shouldn't be screaming, but I kind of get it. Like I can see it. So I really appreciated that kind of explanation. I have so many friends who are teachers, and if there was one word used this year, when I say, how's your school year going? Oh, the kids are so disrespectful. That would be a refrain I have heard all year long. So to hear from the mouths of students to say, hey, yeah, I'm seeing them be disrespectful, but I also think there's a reason behind it. And I think that is really valuable. And, you know, we need to hear that from the mouths of kids themselves. So I'm really glad the kids brought that up, and that it isn't, you know, and this lack of empathy, I believe, you know, that they said was also part of the social skills. And I think it was Ashani who said, well, you know, ever since the pandemic, you just want to get through school. You just need to get through your classes. You don't have time to look and think about somebody else. And I thought that was a really good point. I never would have thought lack of empathy came from isolation of the pandemic, but oh my gosh, of course it would. when you're isolated and you're also going through something and you're miserable, it's really hard to have space for other people who might be miserable. It's really hard to have space for anybody else because you're going through your own thing. And then add schoolwork, and in the case of some of the students, advanced placement classes and honors classes, and that level of pressure. Yeah, that's a lot. I mean, how do you have time to think about, oh, that kid looks sad, when you're like, I got to finish calculus and AP physics and I have to do this. You know, it is a lot. And I really was glad that they said that, because I don't think that it's like, you know, not having empathy. I think it's having so much on their mind and going through so much. So it was really cool to hear that out of the mouth of an actual student who's going through it. The one thing that I was really nervous to talk to the high school kids about, and it's nothing, it never comes up when I'm presenting in front of the younger kids, because keep in mind, my presentation is about being kind, being empathetic, having school pride, making good choices. So it would not be in my job to ever bring up active shooting drills and school shootings. But when talking to teenage kids about mental health, I thought I would be remiss to not ask them about it. And, you know, their answers were hard to hear. I'm going to be honest. Like, it was to hear Muhammad say that, like, he basically accepts it. He accepts that it's a possibility in his life. Like, to me, that it was heartbreaking when he first said it in the interview. It reminded me of hearing my mother talk about being a child who lived in an abusive situation growing up. She was in a very abusive childhood. And she basically accepted that every day was going to be bad. You know what I mean? Like, she didn't hope for her childhood to get better because she knew her dad was going to get drunk and it was going to be really bad. And to think that, like, Muhammad feels that way, like he's just accepted that the trauma that this could happen in my given day because he's trying to get an education, just doesn't seem right. It seems like a lot of, it seemed like PTSD apathy. Like, that's what it's like. They're so overwhelmed by this concept that it has to almost become apathetic about it. And that was just heartbreaking to hear, you know, and it's something I also figured was going on, but, and I was a kid who had, you know, my own mental health issues. So on top of that, I can't even imagine going through what they're going through. And Muhammad spoke to a day where in Pittsburgh, there was a bunch of hoax calls that there were school shootings all over our area. And I actually walked into a school. I was presenting that day and I didn't know that the hoax calls were going on. And when I walked up to the school, they were like, oh, we can't let you in right now. And it was really tense. And it was my first time as a grown-up living through, you know, not knowing what's going on. And it was one of those moments where I'm like, well, they just let me in the building and they don't know if it's a hoax yet. Do I text my sister and tell her I might be in danger? And like, I really was just like, I feel like maybe I shouldn't worry her yet. Like, but it was the first time I was put in that position, and it was awful and it was scary and it made me feel frustrated and nervous. And I'm supposed to be presenting and be strong and brave to all these kids, and they're used to it. They're used to it. They're far more used to that kind of situation. And yeah, that was really hard to hear. And it's once again, it's something I kind of knew in my gut, but to actually hear kids verbalize it and talk about it, that was, you know, I just feel like, you know, there are occupations in this world as adults that we choose that could put our lives at risk, right? If you're a police officer or you join the military or you're a firefighter, you know that there is a risk. There shouldn't be a risk to study algebra. You know, these kids are doing what we make them do. It is the law to go to school. So we force them to go to school under these circumstances. It was really hard to hear. It was hard to hear. I'm just being honest, because that is not something that would ever come up in one of my programs. To hear the high school kids talk about a lack of mental health resources in high school and the stigma, I was really surprised by that. It made me realize I live in my own little bubble. You know, I am a full-time mental health advocate. Mental health is the priority in my life. If my mental health isn't in check, I can't do anything else. I put it above everything, including my career. I can't do my career if my mental health isn't in check. I thought this was something we all knew and we all talked about, we all accepted. So to hear that in high school, they're like, well, I mean, I don't even want my friends to know. I mean, you wouldn't want your friend to know because they might think like you're someone who's like that or you're someone who's different. Like I really thought we were all like on the same page with this. That was really hard for me to hear. I was really surprised by that. Then to hear that there are resources, but you almost have to like, jump a hurdle to get into them, or it's not, there's no privacy within it. Or in the case of getting a mental health day on Friday, but if you're in advanced placement classes, you're discouraged from taking them because advanced placement is more important. And I really disagree with that. I think if we start in high school telling kids like, no, you need to finish your homework before you take a mental health day. Well, what does that say to a 35-year-old adult who is being crushed by the stress of work? And we're saying, no, work, no mental health. I mean, what kind of world are we going to have if no one is taking care of themselves? So that's a real, like, it's one thing to offer and have the resources. You have to do the follow through. You have to let the kids use them. You have to let the kids. And I'm telling you, as a child who did take AP courses and the pressure put on me with that, and I struggled, oh my gosh, how wonderful would it have been to have a chill out room? How wonderful would it have been to have resources given to me that I was actually allowed to accept? When Muhammad told his story of culturally not being allowed to accept mental health within his family, I related to that. My Italian-American family, no, there was none of that. And my mother growing up in trauma and never getting the help she needed, she didn't think we needed it. She didn't need help. Why would I need help? So I really related to that. And I was really glad to hear them say that. Now, if you just got the email about my talk and you read the little blurb, and Nancy, I think, wrote it, if I could go ahead and say that. And by the end, it's like, by the end of this talk, you're going to be filled with hope. And then I made that video and I was like, ooh, that might not have come off as hopeful. I mean, because there were some sad topics that the high school kids talked about. But where the hope in that little segment lies, I think, is here are 3 high school students ranging from freshmen to seniors. They are so bright. They have such understanding about mental health already. That's remarkable. They can articulate their feelings and separate that thoughts and feelings. That's remarkable. And beyond that, they all had ideas for ways to help and solutions for the next generation. And if that isn't hopeful and beautiful, then I don't know what is. So even that segment to me was hopeful, even if you're like, oh my gosh, school shootings, mental health. I don't want you walking away from that. I want you to walk away and go, whoa, there were 3 kids who are ready to change the world. How cool is it to be alive right now? Okay. And one of the reasons Nancy, I think, included that blurb is because many times during our meetings for this talk, Nancy or Jamal might be going through something or saying like, oh no, I'm hearing teachers say this, or I'm hearing, social workers say this. And I'm like, right, but guys, this happened this week and this kid said this. And then they both be like, hope for the world. So I really think Nancy was like, and Gab's going to leave you feeling with hope. So I do know where that came from. And I want you to be filled with hope because you should. These kids are amazing. So now I want to tell you what I actually saw in the field this year, starting in late August to present day. This has been the best season for Josh and I in years since the pandemic. We started back full time at the end of August, going, literally every day of the week, doing at least 2 to 3 shows. Phenomenal. The response has been incredible. One of the first things I do need to say, though, is in end of September, for the first time during this entire pandemic, your friend Gab got COVID and it turned into streptococcal pneumonia. And I ended up in an ICU unit for a night, and it was terrifying. And we don't know the true cause, but at the beginning of that week, I was in a school in Deer Lakes and I was using a restroom. And when I flushed, the toilet didn't flush. And I was like, oh no, I can't not leave a flushed toilet. So I flushed it again and the entire toilet shot in my face, got in my eyes, my nose, my mouth. And on that day, my business partner and I were like, okay, well, this will be, if you get sick, this we know. And I did. I got violently sick. It was really, really rough. Now, what I want to tell you is in the past, I've been doing this school program for 10 years, a decade. In the first year, we were overwhelmed with clients. We were doing, on some days we do 4 to 5 performances in a day. That's a lot. That is a lot. Real, like, think of famous rock bands, the Rolling Stones. They don't do 4 shows in a day. They don't, okay? So here we are, and I'm doing a lot of talking on top of singing. So in our first year, I remember one or both of us getting laryngitis. And we would call a school and be like, you know, Josh, my business partner, did all the calls. He'd be like, hi, this is Josh with the Josh and Gab Show. I've got laryngitis. Could we reschedule? Would be the gist of the phone call. The option to reschedule pre-COVID wasn't there. I mean, we would be, are you kidding me? Do you know how hard it is to book an assembly program? Do you know how rigid a school day is? Do you know that we have this entire school year perfectly curated from the first day to the last day? No, there is no room for either you're disappointing the kids or, you know, and there was no option of rescheduling. It was always so, and we would go in, one of us unable to sing, do the show. And I always felt like, man, like, it's really odd that you invite us in to sing about empathy, but then when we need some empathy, we're not getting it, you know? And I would keep that to myself and think it to myself and whatever. So this happens in September, the beginning of our busiest season back, or we're back to full-time business. And I get streptococcal pneumonia and I'm going to need at least 3 weeks off from work. And Josh and I both knew, like, this could end us. This could literally end us. This could be, oh, you don't want to work with them, they're prone to getting sick. Or, oh no, we had no idea what was going to happen. This was the first time as a performer that schools, teachers, administrators, PTO understood, because they understand COVID now. So it was nothing but empathy, truly. I mean, beautiful. We just hope Gab gets better. We will definitely reschedule. The only thing that matters is Gab's health. We will, clients we'd never even met before were like, yes, just get Gab healthy. That's all that matters. And we were met with such empathy. And we had a 100% rebooking, which has never happened. 100% rescheduling of 3 weeks of work, some of which were travel days. It was beautiful. I was so touched. When we talk about the pandemic, yes, a lot of bad came out of it, but a lot of good came out of it too. People are slightly more empathetic. People now understand a hard time. People now understand COVID and what that can do on the human body, and it makes them slightly more empathetic. That was one of the most beautiful, touching things that has happened in my 10 years as a performer. How wonderful the support that I received. And I had never seen anything like that before. Never. I mean, to the point that we've had like schools yell at us on the phone, and I'm like, I'm so like, truly, I'm like, I will come and do the show. Like, it was like night and day. So that alone was really wonderful on my end, as like, wow, like now people maybe understand it. Like, and I get it. Why would you understand if you're an administrator, laryngitis? You know, I mean, I'm sure in your brain, you're like, okay, you're not Adele. You don't really need I mean, my own brother used to do that to me. I'd have to go on vocal rest and my brother would be like, okay, Adele. And I'm like, I'm not saying I'm Adele, but I'm losing my voice because I'm overusing. I mean, this is just my reality. So it's just wild that now there's empathy for sickness, which I did not see that as a performer before. It was show goes on, not if you have COVID. Now you're allowed to stay home. Another thing that I saw that was truly, I think, the most heartwarming thing for me this year were in a typical assembly. Let's say I'm presenting to kindergarten to 5th grade, right? In a typical assembly of that pre-COVID, 4th and 5th grade would be too cool for school. And if you're an administrator or a teacher, you know what I mean, you know, arms crossed. I don't want to hear these baby songs, you know, not in the mood, really make us work for that PTO cupcake fund money that pays us. You know what I mean? We really had to work to get their approval. Not now, not at all now. Especially the older kids are the first. I can dance. I want to be a volunteer. I want to help. I have answers. Like, they're so enthused. They're so excited at the opportunity to act like a kid, get up in front of the whole school and dance. It's remarkable. But this other part that's happening is that they remember us from pre-COVID. So these like 5th, 6th graders, they remember back before COVID when we'd come to the school and what those assemblies were like. So it's a mix of like, we're kids and nostalgia. It's like, I have never seen this with this generation before. I have never seen this like love of nostalgia. I mean, Josh and I have been treated better this year than I think we have ever been treated in our entire career. I did an all ages open mic night in Pittsburgh where a bunch of high school kids were there performing. And there were kids that had met me throughout the years at their school. Just walking to the stage, I got a standing ovation. They were like cheering for me at the end of my set. It was like something out of a movie. And that never happened before. But I think because of what they went through and that trauma, there's now like a nostalgia for a forgotten time, a time that was slightly easier. I mean, that is a sense of maturity that has just come with the pandemic, you know, and it's just something that I saw as someone visiting in the school. Nothing but love. It has been so overwhelming and wonderful from my standpoint. I mentioned it earlier, there has been more screaming, there has been more just in the assembly behavior that has surprised me. And this is no, like, I don't say any judgment. I don't know what it's like to be a teacher. I don't know what it's like to be a kid, just behavior that I'd never seen in an assembly before. Like in a school in particular, there's this one school in Pittsburgh. Josh and I have visited all 10 years of our career. When I was a kid growing up, this school was like the gold mark standard. My mom would always be like, oh, if you could just go to that school. When we would bring our assembly program all these years, I would say to the teachers, the PTO, I'd be like, I don't know, you guys bring us in. And I feel like we just reiterate something you already know. You know, the kids are always well behaved. The kids are always this. Never once have I ever seen a discipline problem during an assembly at this district. This year, wow, I couldn't believe it. And it wasn't even, to me, it wasn't even bad, right? Like it wasn't anything negative. It was an elementary school, and it was a front row were third grade boys, and there were 3 boys. And once again, to me, the school visitor, I didn't find them to be bad. They were just wound up. They came in a little early while we were setting up and doing our sound check. And so they were talking to us. And I think that's like friendly behavior. So I didn't think it was wrong. However, if your teacher tells you don't talk and sit in quiet, you are misbehaving. So they were misbehaving. But once again, nothing that offended me. During the show, they were being a little rowdy, but as I mentioned, our show is rowdy. So it's hard to know like how far you can go. And there is a point in the show this year, I really felt it was important to encourage kids to have a good mindset when they start their school day. So I do this little segment where I'm like, raise your hand if the only reason you like to come to school is to see your friends. Raise your hand if that's why you like to come to school. And every kid raises their hands because of course they want to see their friends. And then I'm like, raise your hand if the only reason you like to come to school is because you have a favorite teacher who you love to see. And almost every single kid raises their hands, are pointing to their favorite teacher, and the teachers are all, hamming it up on the side, and it's adorable. And then I'm like, okay, be honest. Raise your hand if you really love to come to school because your cafeteria serves delicious chicken nuggies. And I say it like a maniac, like chicken nuggets. And the kids go wild. I mean, it is like I say the one thing that brings everyone in this world together, chicken nuggies. And the kids are all screaming and they're getting out of control. And then they settle down, right? Because I have more to say. So they all stop talking. Well, in this scenario where I'm at this school where in general, the kids are always acting perfect, the 3 boys are like, chicken nugget, like they're bouncing out of their seat. The teacher's like, stop it. 2 of them stop it, but 1 can't. And anytime I say anything and he feels my energy is going to go into that chicken nugget zone, he's like, chicken nugget, like he can't stop himself. And she eventually had to grab him and pull him out of the assembly, something I had never seen in 10 years at this district. A kid, 1, not listening to the teacher, 2, still not listening to the teacher, 3, getting yanked out of the assembly. I couldn't believe it. And then months later, I did this other event for Allegheny County. It was like for books. And that kid was there and he was wound up. And the first thing he did was like, chicken nuggets. And he got all the other kids wound up. And like the people from the Library Association were like, hey, like, sorry if you thought the kids were bad. And we're like, we don't think they're bad. We think they enjoy what we do. And they're celebrating it. Like, I get it. You know what I'm saying? Like, I really get it. But I also get it from the teacher's standpoint. It has been a rough few years. And while it has been rough on the kids, if I don't take a moment to say it has been rougher on the teachers, we're being remiss. Come on. When you went to school, wherever you went to school, I know my best friend went to Cal U to become a teacher. No one ever said, hey, you're going to have to deal with this global pandemic and you're going to have to learn how to teach kids through a computer. That's something that's going to happen down the line. No one said to you, oh, by the way, you want to be a teacher and you want to help the next generation. You're also going to kind of have to be a security guard cop, and you may have to use your own body as a human shield. No one, like, that was not what you were taught 15 years ago at Slippery Rock. Like, that's not what people were signed up for. These teachers have gone above and beyond. It is no surprise that the retirement rate is going up. We need more resources for these teachers. They are going to bat, and they are people too. And I really just want to give a shout out. I love teachers. I think 2 days ago was Teacher Appreciation Day. Teachers shaped who I am as a person. And as a kid who went through a lot of trauma, I needed the love and support of all of my teachers who were constantly there for me. So I just wanted to I know, like, I'm always defending the kids, but I needed to also say something on behalf of the teachers too, because it's a lot. It is a lot. Something else this year that has never happened in the conversation. So 10 years doing this program. Like I said, as Nancy described, it was originally called an anti-bully program. About, honestly, 2 years into the program, I remember turning to Josh, my business partner, and saying, Josh, I don't like saying anti-bully. Like, we're literally saying we're anti a kid. Because we both know, like, kids who bully are going through stuff. They're kids who need mental health resources. We can't depict them as the villain. They need help too. So this year I tried something new. I just was like, let me just see, like, we all went through this pandemic. We've all learned a little more about empathy and understanding and what it is to go through a hard time, right? Like, even a 5-year-old now knows what a hard time is. So I've been presenting like this, and I'll say, raise your hand if you have sympathy for kids who get bullied in school? And everyone raises their hand. Of course, they have sympathy for a kid who gets bullied at school. And then I say, who has sympathy for the bullies? Who has sympathy for the bullies in school? And I raise my hand, Josh raises his hand, and kids are like, no. But then hands start coming up. And I'm like, oh, those with your hands up, keep them up, because I want to hear why. And I walk over and I let an 8-year-old say why we should have sympathy for a bully. And the responses this year have been beautiful. I mean, just as simple as, well, because they're probably going through a hard time and they probably need help, and maybe they just need someone to be nice to them. Or, maybe they're being a bully because they need attention and the only way they can get it is being negative, but what they really need is someone to talk to. Or, all of these compassionate ideas behind why someone might be a bully. And I had never heard that kind of conversation prior to the pandemic. Like, the pandemic definitely leveled the playing field. It let people see things. And also, I'm sure people saw, like, a kid who they knew in 1st grade was one way, and now that they returned in 5th grade, they're acting a different way. And maybe through your own experiences could go, oh, I did hear they lost their grandparent. Maybe that's why they're upset this year, or whatever. But I have never seen, I've never had these conversations where we can actually talk about helping the bully rather than just stigmatizing a kid and being like, you're bad. I'm really like, yeah, that's just not, my cup of tea. I don't like to just write off children as being bad. They're kids. And speaking of grandparents, it's another thing that's come up a lot. I've had kids raise their hand. And when we are having this conversation about hard times or being there for someone, having empathy for someone, if you see someone crying in the hallway, what would you do to help, right? And a kid will say, oh, I understand because my grandma died of COVID last year. And when I came to school, I was crying. Or, oh, I lost my uncle. He had a stroke related to COVID. Or, you're hearing way more now. I've never had kids just like talking about grief the way they have this year. On the other end of that, I've had a lot of teachers talking about grief, teachers who've lost their spouses, teachers who they've had heart attacks and strokes, teachers who, there's been a lot of trauma on both ends. The kids have been going through it in their families. The teachers are going through it with their families. It's a lot. I'm hearing that everyone is going through a lot. One of the things that has been fun for me and what I love about my job is that because everyone has gone through a lot, because everyone has grieved not just losing people, grieving their childhood, grieving the job you once knew, and now it's not that way anymore. You know, there's been a lot of grief. Grief can be deeper than just losing a physical person. This year, my assembly program, I think, did so well was because both the kids and the staff needed some fun. They needed a 1-hour concert with comedy and motivational speaking and love for your school. Because if you love your school, then you won't be mean to the kids in your school, because you want your school to be the best school it can be. And if you love your school, you'll be nice to your teachers because you want them to work there and be there for you. And if you love your school, you can have chicken nuggets on Friday. You know, I mean, that's what I do. I go in and I remind kids to be kids, teachers to have fun. I want you guys to enjoy, because school is important. School is so important, especially for kids who have rough home lives. This is their time. This is the part of the day that's safe for them. So, you know, I'm so honored that I get to come in and give some fun to people who have really been going through it, you know, while promoting positive lessons. It's a real win-win for me, but I've had so many teachers come up and tell me like, oh my gosh, we needed this so much this week. You have no idea. We lost it. We had a student who passed away. We had this go on. We had this go on. I've been to schools where the high school burned down, and we're at the elementary schools trying to bring joy. I mean, there has been a lot of trauma on top of it all. And to get to come in and remind everybody that it's okay to have fun and to see teacher, like, I'm sorry, anytime teachers dance, I don't know if you're a teacher out there, I love you, but when you dance, when you clap, when you start singing along, please do that. If you have fun doing that, if you have fun being childlike, your students love it. It is such a thrill for them. There is nothing more fun than when the teachers get up and also do the glue stick dance. And you don't know what that is unless you've seen our program, but it's the dance craze of the nation, folks. And when teachers get up and do the running man next to like a 5-year-old who's trying to figure out how to do the running man, it is like a beautiful experience. And it's a wonderful cathartic release from everything that we've all been going through. I mean, it's really, yeah, I truly say, Josh says it too, this year we have received the most love we have ever received as a duo. And I think it's because our message is positive, and everybody needs a little positivity this year. So I think what I would like to end with is what I want to see, what I would love to see for next year, right? I want more empathy and kindness. I do. I want it for the kiddos. Right? I don't want to hear, I come into schools often and it'll be like, oh, good luck. They're all horrible. And then I present for an hour and they're not all horrible, right? They're all going through different stuff, you know, and especially at the middle school level, if I'm presented with, this is the worst group of 8th graders we ever had, I generally open with this. This is what I will open with. I say, hi, I'm Gab. I have mental health issues. I list all my mental health issues. I say, I was bullied when I was a student. And then I say, I'm just curious, are you guys being nice to one another this school year? And like, you know, it's middle school. So they're like, no, maybe, yeah. And then I'm like, okay, are you guys being nice to your teachers this year? Yeah, maybe, you know. And then I say, are you being nice to yourselves this year? And it'll be like, no. And then then the conversation starts, right? So I find that a lot of kids are going through a lot. They're not giving themselves self-love and self-care. We, the adults, have to teach that to them. Unfortunately, they're not just going to know it naturally. With that said, we also, the teachers, need to have self-love and self-care, right? It's just as important. But when I am presented with that kid is bad, or like, I think I had told Nancy and Jamal a story. I was presenting for a camp. It was funded by the Pittsburgh police. And a kid was being really bad, not bad that offended me, just loud, disruptive. Once again, that doesn't bother me in a loud, disruptive assembly. You know what I mean? It's a rock and roll concert. I'm not offended by that, but he was being disruptive. At the end of the show, it was the first day of the camp. A police officer came up to me and was like, hey, I just want to let you know, we're kicking him out of camp. He's not going to be here. I'm so sorry that happened to you. He should not have behaved that way. And I'm like, whoa. Don't kick him out. Wait, can I talk to him? Can I just talk to him for 2 seconds? And they're like, yeah. And the kid walks over and I'm like, hey man, I just want to stop. You seem like you're not having a good day today. What's going on? Are you okay? Is everything all right? And he was like, no, it's not. And I'm like, well, what's going on? And he was like, well, last night I had to see my dad get arrested on my front porch for selling cocaine. And I was like, whoa, okay, well, that would definitely put me in a bad mood. And I won't want to sit through a concert. And he's like, yeah. I'm like, I hope things get better, buddy. And he started walking away. And so I turned to the cop and I'm like, that's why you can't kick him out. Like, you know what I mean? Like he more than anybody needs to be here this week. He needs to get away from his house this week. Let him stay. But I think that's the thing. When you're an officer, when you're a teacher, when you have to keep the rules going, when the day is set up and it's hard to find those nuanced gray moments. But generally, I just believe this. Kids aren't bad. They're not bad. If they're acting bad, they're probably going through something bad. And it's really about finding those resources so we can help those kids, right? We have to help those kids. We need more resources. And I think, how are we going to get the funding to do this? I think we are going to have to take a little time in the school week and reteach how to be social, how to develop social skills. I mean, even grown-ups are losing them. I mean, I love the internet for all the positive, but at the same time, there are people who are my dear friends and their online profile is toxic. But when I'm hanging out with them, they're the best people I know. And I'm like, what? Why do you do this online? So it's two different people. Your online presence and your real life presence are two separate things. And we need to teach that to kids because they don't know. They think TikTok is real. So as sad as that is, I do think there has to be some room for social skill and re-education on how to talk to people and what we expect from you because they don't know it. They are a little clueless. With the kindness and empathy, it has to also go back to faculty. If you're a parent, please, if you're a parent, I don't know that any parents are watching, but I'm begging you from the bottom of my heart to have empathy for teachers. If you know about Megan Trainor, you know about Megan Trainor. Yeah. Have every teacher I've ever had been perfect? No, but 99.999% of them are incredible. And like I've said, they've had to do way more than they signed up for when they went to Slippery Rock in 2001. So let's give a little grace and space for the faculty who are not only trying to help your kids be educated, learn basic learning skills, humanitarian skills, social skills, they're also protecting them with their body as a human shield. Teachers need kindness. Teachers need grace. Teachers need to be treated with humanity because they are human beings. I guess that's the one thing I would ask for teachers. And I don't know how we do this, but more mental health support for teachers, more support for teachers. I know there's a teacher shortage. So what do we do? How do we get them more aides? What do we do to support teachers? Is there a way that the school can bring in a psychologist and do teacher group therapy so that they can vent maybe with teachers from different districts so you're not alone? I'm sure poor teachers right now are literally having thoughts. They're like, I can't believe I'm even thinking these thoughts. I mean, one of my dearest friends who I've always said is one of the best teachers I've ever known. I mean, this woman was born to be a teacher. It's who she is. She's so awesome. And I saw her in April and I hadn't seen her the whole school year. And she was just like, I'm looking for another job. I'm looking for a new career. And I'm like, no, they can't break you. You cannot be broken by this. I'm like, what do you need? Are you in therapy? And she's like, oh, I don't even have time for therapy. So how do can we work out a way to give teachers some space for therapy and mental health resources because they deserve it just as much as the kids do. I just want to say it's an honor. It's one of the honors of my life that I'm allowed to go into schools and present this message. I thank all of you for what you do. Your kids are great. I know that you're scared. The world is scary. We've let the kids down in a lot of ways. If there's a planet for them, I really think this generation of kids are remarkable, kind, empathetic, understanding, and they just need a little more molding and a little more education to understand how to be social and be people. But they're there, guys. The clay molding is there and it's possible. So don't give up on the kids. Don't give up on the teachers. But to anyone watching, especially, don't give up on you. You are awesome. You're worth it. You're worth going to therapy. You're worth the time it takes to find a therapist. And know that I'm rooting for you. I really am. Thank you all very much. I'm going to turn it over to Nancy and Jamal.
You're talking on mute, Nancy.
Whoa. If I'm talking on mute, then that means nobody can hear me. which is not-
Exactly.
I saw somebody was asking about Gab and her availability, and I'm going to tell you personally that she's available for everything that you asked about, that she'll travel, and it would be excellent to have her. Now, I just put a link in the chat that is Ride the Wave, which is her website. And I'm going to start adding some other contact information for Gab into the chat. And I'm going to add in her email too, so that anybody that wants to reach out to her afterwards will have that information.
I got you too, Nance.
Oh, there you go. She got the, okay. Thank you.
So yeah, Gab Bonesso can lead you to everything. And then joshandgab.com is the kids show that I do with Josh. So yeah.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
That everybody has everything they need now to get in touch with Gab. And let me know if you need anything else, because we want to keep our Gab busy. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm going to be in Scranton the next 2 days. If any of you are in the
Yeah.
Scranton area, I'm
I
going.
was just about to say, Gab is busy. Gab does travel, and the reason that we're doing this particular webinar on a Wednesday is because Gab has to travel. So
Thank you guys for accommodating that too, Nancy.
Not
You're
a-
the best.
anything-
Our pleasure. Our pleasure. Our pleasure.
most definitely.
Hey, yep, that's what I'm going to see.
I want to remind everybody, if you have any questions, please put your questions in that Q&A area. If you scroll your mouse along the bottom of the Zoom screen, there should be an area that says Q&A. If you put your question there, I'll try my best to ask it to Gab. Angela, who has been very busy in the chat, who gave me a lot of points to actually work off since we didn't have a whole lot of questions right now. But she also asked a question in the chat, in the Q&A, so I will ask you that. She says, great work. The anonymous access to mental health services for teens are necessary due to peer pressure. How do you think that can be arranged? I'm thinking via text and emails in lieu of within the classroom or offices in front of others. So what do you think about the anonymity of asking for help and that being a private thing?
Oh, totally. I mean, I think, few people, I mean, I've been doing this forever, right? Like I'm used to having mental health diagnoses, so I'm super comfortable talking about it. But, to hear the kids talk like, oh no, there's a stigma, I think it would be really beneficial, even if it's just stop into your guidance counselor's office and say, look, I want to do this, but I want it privately, or an email, some way that they can get help without having to, but there has to be a way where you can leave class and everyone doesn't have to know where you're going. You know what I mean? Like, oh, I have an appointment with the principal, but you're really going to the chill out room, or something like that. But I do think it would be, it sounds like from the kids that it would be very beneficial if they could do it in a way that wasn't everyone knew about it.
It's great. I think a lot of the things that were spoken about by the youth, by you, some of the things that have been posted in the chat as I've been reading through are like very trauma-informed principles that I think the more we learn about actual trauma, the more it becomes sort of just ingrained in everyday living, and that's a great thing. Like the chill room or common room or whatever. That's something that was, I think Sandy Bloom and her partners from the Sanctuary Institute had incorporated into the Sanctuary program, which is a beautiful thing. But we don't think about those things. People always think about the reasons why they can't do things instead of the benefits of what if we really did though. Like, and that's sort of the thing that it always kind of gets me. Jennifer says, what about the kids who have social anxiety? Is it really difficult for them to talk about what's going on, especially in front of others? And I think, having anxiety is something that I think a lot of people actually deal with. So how do you think, dealing with something like that, and just in terms of the pandemic and anxiety and, coming back to school and then having to deal with everything that's kind of rushing at you, and then feeling the stigma of having anxiety and having to speak up about it in front of other people? Like, what do you think about that?
No, I really did relate to that because I was a kid who took a lot of AP courses. My dad put a lot, like my father had a lot of pressure with school, and my mother was my trusted adult. I always say to the kids, have one trusted adult, at least one that you can tell if you're getting bullied, if you're going through mental health issues. And my mom was my person. And so when the anxiety was overwhelming, she would remind me like, okay, even if you fail this test, you still get to live in this house, wake up in your bed, we'll feed you, bringing it down, grounding you to present day. I mean, that's all anxiety truly is. You stop being grounded and you go off in your brain and you need to come back. And I didn't have those skills. I only got my skills for anxiety in the last 3 years. So that is, having that adult who can help ground you and help remind you, like, long story short, I had a really bad depressive episode back in, it was after my mother died and after my brother died. So 2016, a really, really like the last horrid manic depressive episode where the depression was that bad. And mine was all money related. I got into such a dark place because of money. And I didn't think I could get out of a hole I was in. And my sister was my mom was already gone. And my sister was my voice of reason, who just grounded me and was like, okay, yeah, money is bad right now, but you're not going to, you'll live with me. You're not going to live on the street. And, and she grounded it to the way where I was like, oh yeah, this isn't overwhelming. I can deal with this, and so that I would just, if you don't have a therapist or you're in the process of finding one, I have a lot of friends who their kids are trying to get a therapist and the wait list is extremely long. And my friends do is they communicate with their kid. They do check-ins with their kid. They have been learning online, like techniques to help them. They've actually reached out to me and I've given them so many different grounding techniques. You need your community while you're finding your doctor. And the other thing, and I say this to teachers all the time, my friends who are teachers who applaud what I do, love that I'm vocal about mental health. And when I say to them, when they're stressed and wanting to quit their career, and I'm like, are you seeing a therapist? Oh, I don't have time. I don't have time for that. And it's like, okay, why do you think I have time? Second of all, I'm telling you, you are important. You are worth the time. Take the time for you. You are worth it. Like, you have to remind people of that. It's not like, what do you don't have the time? Why? Because you want to catch up on your Netflix? No, you have the time for 1 hour of therapy. If I have the time, you have the time. And I was in therapy sometimes 5 days a week. So I don't want to hear it.
Yeah, like, you don't know my life.
You don't know what I'm to Scranton, and I got to be back Saturday to perform at a prom, and then I'm running the marathon. Give me a little credit, people. I'm busy. And I'm releasing an album, Gab Bonesso, Manic Depressive. And I'm finding a nonprofit. I'm going to give donations for my album to a mental health organization. I just haven't decided which one yet.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. I something that really stuck out to me about what you just said is the importance of support people, right? And especially adults in the lives of our youth. I think that's a very important thing. I think especially sometimes as adults, we look at youth, and if they don't seem to connect to us right away, or they seem to always be blowing us off, we seem to fall back. Well, they don't want to deal with me, right? I encourage you to, even if they seem to be blowing you off, keep at it. Because in the moment when that kid needs someone, they'll know who to turn to. They need to be reminded of that constantly, so that if they do have a need, something to talk about, that's going to be a very important thing. Don't just fall back. Don't just write the kid off or stop trying. Keep at it. That's a very important thing.
Yeah, a constant reminder, like, I think you're worth it. Are you okay? Like, just the simple, are you okay? What's going on? It doesn't even have to be that deep. But I think that's true of adults too. Like, I think we often, an adult treats us with nastiness and we're just like, done. and don't give them 1 second of grace. And lately, when people say something that should and does offend me, I'm like, oh, what's going on? You okay? Are you all right? Like, turn it back. Someone's being mean. Are you okay? Are you all right now? Like, why not? If you don't want to go get therapy, I'm at least gonna use therapy on you. So there you go.
Right.
That's where we are now.
Exactly. Angela also put in the chat earlier, and this was one of those things that made me think about, these little trauma-informed principles that are being used more and more often that I see. She said, feeling for the bully is a different perspective. I have recently seen several instances where the flip side of situations have been considered, not what's wrong with you, but what happened to you, sort of expanded to really consider why the bad people do what they do. They were hurt children that grew into people who hurt others. A very hard concept to embrace. However, when we want to be the judges and get revenge, is something that's very difficult. How do you get people to see the flip side of that?
To see that the kids who are the bullies are going through trauma.
Yeah.
I mean, I usually present it like I really do, like your kids, like an 8-year-old. Or look, if you're on the other end of that 8-year-old, I could see you saying they're a monster, they're evil, they're this, because you're also 8 years old and you're having that emotionality. But let's just step back. They're 8 years old. There's something going on. There's a reason. We just need to find the reason. And that's why we have to be nice to the bully. And then maybe eventually the bully will stop bullying and you got a new friend. Like, there's that potential is there. Or maybe there's a really bad situation going on and there's going to be more stuff we need to do to help this bully. And they might have to get out of their home life. I mean, it's so multi-level. Now, I won't go into that. I wouldn't say like they have to get out of their home life, but I would say we don't know what is going on in someone else's life. So we have to have a little bit of room for that. And I just don't believe that. I really don't. Do I believe there are evil people in the world? Sure. They're probably 0.0001. So yes, every once in a while in a school, there may be one kid who will end up being a sociopath. Yeah, I guess that's possible. But overall, no. And I always look at the world like there's 3 kinds of people, right? There's the people who in any given situation, they want to do the right thing. They want to help. They see somebody, they want to do something good. It's just, that's who they are. It's how they naturally feel. Then there's people who always roll their eyes at those people, see a human interest story on TV and are like, whatever, that never happened in my life, always going to be negative. Then there's the middle people who they've never really been presented with the idea to think about others, or like, look, you could be kind, or, mental health things, like they just don't know. So those are the people that I am trying to reach. They're the people where I'm like, hey, you pick up a pencil for someone who's been having a really bad day, to that person, as silly as it sounds, you picking up a pencil for them and being like, here you go, you drop that. You're Batman. You're Spider-Man. You're a superhero to someone who's having a horrible day and they needed to see one moment of kindness to them to keep going. You just did that. You're Spider-Man. Look at you. I mean, it's that simple to be a hero in this world. Really, it is. And I'm the person who, like, the littlest bit of kindness you give me, and I'm like, I eat it up. I'm like, oh my God, thank you. You said hi. You smile. Here's my bank account. I love you. Yeah, I need it more than anybody. Like I very, and this might be sad to say out loud, but I've always very much related to Robin Williams. I've got that high energy. When you see me, I'm cheering you up. I'm making you happy. No one sees me when I'm on the other side of that. You know what I mean? And there's a downside to being as happy Gab, right? There's that sad side. So I am someone who needs kindness. I am someone who needs empathy. I am someone who needs that, especially in my more depressive moments. So yeah, I can advocate for doing it because I'm someone who needs it.
Yeah. I'm going to advise you to stop giving people your bank account information. So we're also having a conversation in the chat about questions, and I'm big on understanding, and Nancy will tell you this because she and I always go back and forth sometimes, and we don't understand what each other. Well, she doesn't understand me a lot of the times, but she pushes and she pushes so that she can understand. So, right, a lot of our relationship is based on, understanding what the other needs, right? I'm really big on understanding, but you don't get to an understanding unless you ask questions. Nancy's always asking me questions. What else, Jamal? That's not what I'm looking for. Tell me more. Like, so it's one of those situations where when we're talking to our youth, to ask the questions to get to an understanding, right? I guess the question that I have for you is, how do you begin to get people to see that you have to ask the questions and you have to be prepared for the answer that you get?
Yeah.
I think that's, a lot of the things that adults have an issue with, teachers, people who work with youth in general, is that part of it, is the hard questions, because things do get busy. I mean, like you said, teachers deal with a lot. They're not only, cops and teachers and bodyguards. They're also mental health providers. So it's like you got 30 kids in a classroom and worried about grading tests and getting them to pass all of the things that they need to pass so the school can get, there's a lot that a teacher has to deal with. So when you get to a point where you have to figure out, you got to stop and actually take time to ask a question and then potentially have a conversation that could alter someone's life, you're not really necessarily thinking of it in that way. So how do you, get to a point where it's like you have to ask the questions and be prepared for the answers that you get?
Yeah, I mean, in the way you just presented it too, like the way you just presented it, it's like you're going to ask that question, and then this teacher who's already so overwhelmed by their job, now there's a chance that the answer to this question is going to be so much more work on their plate to help one kid in a classroom of 30 kids. And you may have 27 more kids who you're going to have to figure this out too. Yeah, that is overwhelming. I'm in a really lucky spot in a lot of ways because I come in for, 1 hour in and out. And I have an ability where I can be very vulnerable. I'm a performer, so vulnerability is part of that. And so when I am very open up top with, these are my mental health elements, I was bullied, I've gone through this, there's already that like, okay, well, she's shared about herself. So if she asks me a question, I'm more comfortable sharing to her because she's honest, you know what I mean? And not that the teachers aren't honest, but I mean, I would be very scared if I were an English teacher to start my class with, hi, welcome to AP English. My name is Miss Bonesso. I have bipolar disorder. I would never do that. You would never do that in a school situation. So I think kids trust me a little faster than a teacher that they've seen all year long, because the teacher's in charge. They're the boss. I'm the captain of fun. I'm here to, just have a good time with you guys for 1 hour and make you love yourself. Why wouldn't you like me or trust me? So it is a little easier for me. And I want more. I think teachers truly need more support. Like I said, like whether it means more aides, more social workers within the school. And I think they need social work support for the kids and for the teachers themselves. I really do think that they're overwhelmed. When you are going through so much in the world, it's hard to have empathy for others. I mean, I don't know. I just remember like times where a family member was dying and I'd be leaving a hospital and I knew I was driving poorly. You know what I mean? Like maybe I was going under the speed limit. Maybe I stayed at the red light a little too long. So when the opposite happens now, if I'm behind someone and they're not going, I think, oh, were they just crying because they just left their mom in the hospital? But I had to live through that to have the understanding of that empathy. And so, I do think there is, you can learn empathy, but for some of us, it just kind of happens naturally because of the trauma that we go through.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Jamal,
Yes, ma'am.
may I interject or
Please
would I
do.
I was thinking about what you were saying, Gab, and I haven't seen any comments about this, but talking about our mental health is to me is a really big deal. And that with the stigma of being labeled as a person, with a mental health diagnosis, certainly in the business world, and then in a lot of family situations or in specific cultural situations, and on and on and on, it's still a problem. And I believe personally that our whole world has changed, due to the pandemic, and that we have now, every one of us on the planet, experienced trauma. So don't tell me you don't know what it is, because we've all been through it now. And I have come to a point where I think, well, how can somebody really know me or understand me, or maybe understand where I'm coming from, if they don't consider some of that too? And I have realized in the few, since the pandemic, and I think here I am working in this mental health world. Everybody that I work with, talk to business-wise, whatever it is either a person with a mental health diagnosis or has a family member who is. And that's why they're there. And so if I can't speak openly in this group, there's nowhere that I can speak. And the times when I have found myself in a meeting saying, well, I just was talking to my therapist, and afterwards, I did that in one of the webinars. And today we had over 450. And I, in this other webinar, I said something about, my diagnosis, and I thought, oh no, I just told 500 complete strangers whose faces I didn't even see that I'm seeing a therapist. Oh no. And then this is recorded, and who knows who's going to watch it. Oh no. And realized that it felt great. And it is such a relief to let go of it. And so I appreciate what you're saying that our kids need, because if you don't get it when you're younger, it is so much more difficult as each year goes by. And to get it when you're younger, it means that there's a better chance for our world too. So I would like to thank you for all that you've said to us today, and for listening to me share my story.
Definitely. And someone just commented, I think it's worth noting that telling strangers about mental health needs can be easier than telling peers and friends, and 100%. 100%. That's why I love to tell strangers, because I'm usually someone else like, oh, you too. And then it's just like an instant connection. It's like, my people. Okay. So.
It's one of those situations where I think when it comes down to telling people who you have a connection to, it becomes a lot more emotional, right? And for whatever reason, we don't like to feel our emotions. It's one of those situations. I can talk to a room full of strangers about everything and anything that's ever happened to me in life and not shed a tear. The minute I talk to somebody who I know, who knows me, the waterworks just start. And it's like, oh my God, this isn't even affecting me anymore. Why am I crying? Like, but it's one of those situations. It's kind of crazy. We have an anonymous attendee, which the question that they asked, I have a ton of ideas. I just want to be clear about that. So if this person would like to email myself or Nancy can put you in touch with me, however it goes. But I'm interested in your thoughts, Gab. They say, amazing presentation. I do not know if I missed it, but what are some ways we can bring out mental health awareness in underrepresented communities? I assume that even though we make a program to talk about the mental health issues, people are unable to speak up or try to bring themselves out.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we need more opportunities for free events, I would think, where we can go into communities and like have, I don't want to say, I always get in trouble when I say mental health celebration, because people are like, well, you can't celebrate. Not everyone's having a good time with their mental health. I'm like, I don't have a good time every day, but I'm proud to be a mental health survivor, and I'm proud to have this battle that I try to win every day. So I think that's what I'm celebrating. But I think that kind of, just conversation, I've with the pro kindness, I've been invited to area churches sometimes to
Mhm.
present on being kind. So it'd be really cool if they different churches, synagogues, temples in the area could mosques could open up to people coming maybe to present on mental health to their, groups, and then also within schools. I mean, I think we need more of that. We need more talking about it, breaking the stigma. I try to talk about it when I can. I mean, you have to understand schools bring me in to talk about kindness. So I have to like clear it ahead of time. Like, hey, can I also talk about mental health? Is that okay? Because it is not something that is still a common topic. Unless you come to my stand-up shows and then you'd think that's all I talk about. But I don't have kids or a husband. My husband is bipolar disorder. My child is OCD and CPTSD. So that's what's going on with me.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things. It's just like you said, talking about it and also acting on it, because depending on where you are, different communities, different counties, everybody's mental health is set up a little differently. So whoever your county people are for, mental health or whatever, get into contact with somebody and see what it is that you can do. If it's not something that's being really pushed in your county, try to make a push for it, but that only happens by talking. That only happens by doing some things. Like you said, putting together an event, a free event, and marketing the heck out of it. Like, it's so much that I think that can be done in those situations if you have a passion for what it is that you're doing. And if you have a passion for mental health and getting awareness out there, hey, it's May. It's the time to do it. So I want to be mindful of time. Angela did put another thought into the Q&A. And it was based around, we were talking about people talking about their mental health or asking for help for mental health in front of other people. She said having a code phrase to go to a service might work. When we talk to our parents about safety, we suggest that they give their teens an out statement for given situations without being seen as wimps. Such as, I have to go watch my little brother, or when a peer wants to get into something unsafe, give them a code word that kind of lets them out. So I want to thank Angela for that bit of advice for everyone. If anyone else has any resources or anything, I saw some of them being posted in the chat. Please feel free to put them in the chat. Nancy is very good at compiling those resources after we're done and sending them out in the follow-up email after the presentations. And with that, I'm going to be mindful of everybody's time. We have about 5 minutes left. I want to say thank you to Gab for an amazing presentation yet again. And I'm going to turn it back over to Nancy.
Thank you, Jamal. So Gab, is there anything else that you wanted to add before I do my wind down here?
No, just thanks to everyone for tuning in, and thanks to both of you for meeting with me and continuing to want to work with me and let me have a voice and a voice for the kids. So thank you.
Well, we love you and we always learn something, and I'm going to tell you, I'm feeling hopeful, and I hope that there are another 350 people who are feeling hopeful too. And I added the link for our evaluation into the chat. And I am very serious, Jamal will back me up, that I read them all, we discuss them, I come up with ideas from them, and they're an important part of what we do here at the PA Care Partnership. And so I thank you if you take just a couple of minutes to complete the eval for us. And I'd like to remind everybody that our next presentation is, I love this title. Is it substance abuse? Is it mental health? Or is it both? Understanding co-occurring, how it begins, how to recognize symptoms, and how it grows. And I in my years of being around the mental health world, co-occurring gets really obvious when it's often in its worst stages. And so if you have the opportunity, I encourage you to attend this webinar and learn more about recognizing the symptoms in people, especially teens, before it gets to that point. Our speakers are our very own Jamal Ford, who you see here on the screen, and Kevin Piskarik, who is with Youth Move PA. And Kevin is going to share his story of addiction as a teen and co-occurring through his recovery, and the work that he's doing today. Jamal will share his work at a residential treatment facility with youth involved in juvenile justice and also dealing with co-occurring issues. I'm going to pop the link in the chat right now for registering for that webinar. And we have 2 minutes left if anyone else has anything they'd like to add or say. And I will add that I'm grateful, just grateful to be a part of this project, to have an opportunity to truly help where it's needed, to have found such amazing people in this world like Gab Bonesso, and to be able to work with them all, and to have this amazing following of people who come out to our webinars. And I want to thank you all.
As always, thank you everyone for attending. We really appreciate you all for continuing to come back. It's been a pleasure talking to you all. And it's May, it's Mental Health Awareness Month. So remember to be kind to each other and be kind to yourselves.
Hugs to everyone.
Thanks, everyone.